The wind combed the grass in thin, ragged streaks and pushed a pale curtain of dust against the low hills. Corbin Thorne watched it from his porch with a mug of coffee cupped in both hands, letting the heat seep into his fingers. The sky was a hard, empty blue. It had been that way for weeks. Out here on the far edge of the territory, the world felt scraped down to its bones. He had chosen it that way. No town noise. No church bells. No courthouse steps where men shouted about grievances and glory. Just a scatter of cattle, a house he had put up with his own hands, a half-fallen barn, and a well that reached stubborn water beneath all this dust. It was enough. He drained the mug and set it aside, listening. The place had its own kind of talk, if a man let his ears stretch. Cattle cropping tough grass. A loose board on the barn tapping in the wind. One of the horses in the corral snorting at some private irritation. Nothing out of place. There was fence to mend on the south line before a steer decided the world was greener 1 mile farther along, so he took a coil of wire and his pliers, slung a canteen over his shoulder, and walked out across the brittle pasture. The sun had not yet climbed to full strength, but it was already a weight on his neck. The land dropped suddenly into a shallow wash, its sides gnawed by the last hard rain months back. Corbin started down the slope, boots sliding, then froze. Something lay at the bottom where the sand was pale and damp-looking. For a heartbeat, he thought it was a scrap of blanket, a piece of canvas, some ranch junk washed down and forgotten. Then it moved. He went the rest of the way in 3 long strides. The boy lay curled on his side in the thin shade of a rock, knees drawn up, arms wrapped tight around his middle. His hair was black and dusty, braided crooked as if half the braid had come loose while he fell. His lips were split. His eyes were slit. Every breath rasped like torn cloth. Around his neck, a strip of leather held a small disc of bone worked with careful lines and bits of blue stone. Corbin did not need the beadwork to know what he was. He had seen enough scouts and prisoners in the war, enough stories made flesh on the far edges of the rails. The boy was Apache. The word carried weight in these hills. Men in town spat it, lifted their glasses on it, blamed it for every burned wagon and missing mule. Corbin had heard all the talk. He had even repeated some of it back when there was nothing else to say. That talk stood here with him now, whispering the sensible thing. Back away. Leave the boy. No one saw you. No one will know. If he dies, he dies. That is the way of this country. He crouched anyway. The boy's skin was hot and dry, whatever sweat he'd had baked out of him. Sand stuck to his cheek. There was a torn place along his ribs where something sharp had ripped deerskin and flesh together. Dust caked the raw edges. Hey, Corbin said softly. Kid. One eyelid dragged open. A dark, clouded eye tried to focus on him and failed. The boy's tongue moved, too thick to shape a word. The canteen strap pulled at Corbin's shoulder like a hand reminding him of its weight. He had walked this fence line more than once with just enough water to see himself through, no more. He uncapped it now without thinking, slid an arm under the boy's head, and tipped the canteen until a thin line of water touched cracked lips. The reaction was immediate. The boy jerked, then latched his mouth around the metal, swallowing in hard, desperate gulps. Easy, Corbin said. Slow down. You'll bring it back up. He angled the canteen away, let the boy cough twice, then brought it back, this time only a sip at a time. The boy's hands fluttered weakly, fingers brushing Corbin's wrist as if afraid the water would disappear. When the canteen was nearly half empty, Corbin stopped. The boy let out a small sound, not quite a cry, but did not fight him. His breathing had changed. It was still rough, but there was more of the world in it now. "Better," Corbin said. "You with me." The boy blinked slowly. His eyes cleared a little, enough to show the depth of them. He looked past Corbin once, a nervous, searching glance along the lip of the wash, then back at the man kneeling over him. He said something in Apache, a string of syllables Corbin could not untangle. There was a question in the tone. "I don't speak it," Corbin said. "You got any English?" The boy's brow nodded. After a moment, he rasped, "You, soldier?" Corbin almost laughed, the sound brittle in his own ears. "No, Dot. I quit marching for other men's plans a long time ago. Name's Corbin. Corbin Thorne." The boy worked his lips, as if tasting the name alongside the water. "Corbin," he repeated, then winced as the torn place at his ribs tugged. "Lie still," Corbin said. "You're in no shape to go anywhere." The sensible voice came back, louder now that the emergency had passed. "You are holding the life of a child, whose kin would cut your throat without a second thought if they found you on the wrong side of a ridge. You can walk away. Leave the desert to decide his fate. Men will call it harsh, maybe, but they will understand." Corbin looked down at the small body in the sand, at the bony arms and the bruised shoulders and the band of leather at his neck. He let out a quiet breath. "Damn it," he said. He slid his arms under the boy and lifted him. The child weighed almost nothing. Heat poured off him like off a cooking stone. His head lolled against Corbin's chest. "You picked a bad place to fall, kid," Corbin muttered, starting up the bank. "But I've done the same." The climb pulled at the old scar along his left thigh, the one that still ached when the weather was damp. He ignored it, and the prickle between his shoulders that said this open ground was a foolish place to carry stolen trouble. No rifles cracked from the ridges, no arrow hissed out of the scrub. By the time he reached the yard, his shirt was pasted to his back with sweat. He did not take the boy into the house. The house had windows. Instead, he shouldered open the half-rotten door of the little tack shed pressed against the barn's rear wall, moved a broken plow and a crate of bent horseshoes to the side, and laid the boy on an old blanket. He cleaned a wound with what was left in the canteen, picking sand and grit away as gently as he could. The boy gritted his teeth through most of it, then went slack again as sleep dragged him under. When it was done, Corbin stepped back into the yard. The sky stood high and white as bone overhead. Nothing moved but a crow lifting off the fence post with a single lazy flap. "Dot." He told himself he would keep the boy hidden until he could stand. Then he would find a way to hand him over to some officer or agent whose job it was to count heads and sign papers. That was the reasonable path. Reasonable did not make his stomach unknot. By late afternoon, he'd mended only half the fence. His eyes kept tracking back to the barn as if he expected it to catch fire all on its own. The sensation of being watched grew on him, a slow itch. The sound of riders came out of the south near sundown, a low drumming that soon broke into separate hoofbeats. Corbin set down the wire, wiped his hands on his trousers, and walked toward the yard. 8 men rode in a rough line, dust hanging around their horses. They were the kind of men a hard country shaped. Sunburnt faces, narrow eyes, shoulders like worn stone. Every one of them carried a rifle. The lead man sat a big bay horse and wore a beard gone mostly gray. His name was Pike. Men at the saloon had begun calling him Captain ever since he'd taken it on himself to organize patrols against raiding parties. "Evening, Thorne," Pike called, reining in. Behind him, a younger rider shifted in his saddle and peered openly at the house, the barn, the low hills beyond. He had a thin face and the kind of quick flicking gaze Corbin had seen in green boys who were eager to prove something. Someone had called him Cole the last time Corbin was in town. "Evening," Corbin answered. He kept his hands easy at his sides. One of the bay's ears flicked back toward him, then forward again. "What's the trouble?" "We're tracking a band," Pike said. "Wagon train got hit out near Bitter Draw 2 days ago. Couple men shot, couple women taken. We picked up sign, bare feet, pony tracks, the usual. Trail brought us close to here. You seen anything?" "Smoke on the ridges, riders moving through, tracks near your water." Corbin felt the words coming before Pike finished speaking. They tasted like dust. "Haven't seen anyone but my own stock," he said. Being quiet, Pike studied him. The set of his shoulders did not change, but his eyes narrowed. "Mind if we water the horses and nose around a bit?" "If they came near, I want to know it." Corbin's heartbeat bumped once, then steadied. Saying no would be the same as shouting that there was something worth hiding. Saying yes put 8 armed men within 3 steps of the shed. "Water's back by the pump," he said. "Barn's opened. You'll find more dust than anything else." Pike swung down from the saddle. "Cole, Jenkins, you and 2 others check the outbuildings. Rest of you, see to the horses. We don't linger. I want to be on their trail before full dark." Cole threw a leg over and dropped to the ground, rifle in hand. As he walked toward the barn, his boots scuffed up little ghosts of dust. Corbin fell into step beside him, as though it were the most natural thing in the world. "You don't trust me to keep my own place in order?" he asked lightly. Cole gave a quick grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Just making sure nobody slipped in behind your back, Thorne. Hostiles get clever when they're hungry." They stepped into the barn's dark. Light speared in through the gaps in the boards, carving the air into slow-moving bars. The smells of old hay and horse sweat and dry wood wrapped around them. Jenkins walked the line of stalls, tipping open each empty gate with his boot, glancing into the feed room and the loft. Cole's attention settled on the back wall, where the small door of the tack shed sat half in shadow. "What's in there?" he asked. "Junk," Corbin said. "Tools I haven't fixed, things too bent to bother with." Cole walked toward it anyway. Corbin moved a heartbeat faster and put his hand on the latch first. "Careful," he said. "Inya is near rusted through." He pulled the door open just wide enough for him to slip across the opening. Inside, the boy lay very still, eyes squeezed shut, as if courage alone could make him vanish. From this angle, Cole could see only the front clutter of the shed, a toppled barrel, a tangle of old harness, a coil of rope. Corbin filled the rest of the frame. Cole craned his neck, but the light from the barn did not carry far. He sniffed once. "Close in there," he said. "Like I said," Corbin answered. "Junk and mice. You want I should drag it all out for you to poke through? We'll still be here at midnight while your trail blows away." Jenkins laughed behind him. "Leave the man his trash, Cole. If there were hostiles in there, we'd smell more than dust." Cole hesitated a moment more, then shrugged. "Fine, I. But if we find out you've been harboring them, Thorne, there won't be much left of this place when we come back." "I'll sleep on that," Corbin said. They left the barn. Pike took coffee at the stove and asked the same questions again, worrying them like an old dog with a bone. Corbin held to his story. No riders. No sign. Just cattle and wind. When they finally rode off into the bruised light of evening, the yard felt oddly empty. as if the absence of horses and voices had pulled something out of the air. Only when the dust had settled did Corbin go back and open the shed. The boy was sitting up, braced on one arm, eyes bright and fierce in the dim. He said something sharp and fast in Apache and jabbed a finger toward the door, miming a rifle. "I'd already decided what they wanted to find," Corbin said. "I wasn't about to hand it to them." The boy watched him another long beat. Then, softly, he said, "You lie." "For me?" Corbin leaned against the door jamb, suddenly tired. "Seems that way." The boy's gaze dropped to the canteen at Corbin's hip. He licked his cracked lips, caught himself, and looked aside, ashamed of the need. Corbin uncapped the canteen and passed it over without comment. After he drank, the boy cleared his throat. "Name," he said, touching his own chest. He spoke a string of Apache words, then added, "But white men call me Tomas." "Tomas," Corbin repeated. "All right." "Better than kid." Thomas thought about that, then made a small sound that might have been the start of a laugh. Night came. Corbin ate a hard biscuit and a strip of beef at the table, the lamplight pushing a small circle of yellow against the dark. He cleaned his revolver, checked the bolt on the rifle, and told himself that tomorrow he would ride toward the post and find someone whose job this boy properly was. The notion rang hollow, even as he thought it. He was setting the lamp wick low when the horses in the corral snorted all at once. One struck the rails with a hoof, sharp and quick. The hair on Corbin's arms prickled. The knock on the door was firm and flat, 3 raps like the butt of a rifle. He opened it with the revolver at his side, but not in his hand. A tall figure stood on the porch, outlined by starlight. For a second, her height made his mind insist on "man," but the lines of her face, under the braids, said otherwise. She was lean and broad-shouldered, deerskin falling straight from collarbone to moccasin. Beads and metal bits caught the faint light and gave it back. Behind her, further off, shapes on horseback waited, silent. "Corbin Thorne," she said. Her English was accented but measured, as if she had been taught each word by someone who cared it be said exactly. He felt his name in her mouth like a weight. "That's right, my name is Nigoni," she said. "My father leads those who ride with me." "That's so. You have my cousin," she said. "A boy?" Hurt, Corbin let out a slow breath. He pulled a child out of a wash. Gave him water. "That's what I have. You also hid him from the white riders," she said. You stood in front of their eyes and closed the door. Her gaze did not waver. He had in fact done exactly that, and they both knew it. "I didn't much care for the way they were looking at my barn," he said. "Or the way that thin one holds his rifle." "He itches to use it, Cole," she said. "Yes." His kind ride fast and think slow. From the dark, a man's voice spoke in Apache, calm and low. Nioni answered without looking back. When the exchange was done, she said, "My father asks why you did this. A child of his enemies, water from your own hand, lies to your own people." Why? Corbin could have reached for some smooth answer about decency. What came out was simpler. "He was dying," he said. "Didn't seem right to walk past. Not many white men think about right when they see our children," Nigoni said. There was no anger in it, only a tired knowledge. They think about fear, or gold, or the ease of pulling a trigger. "I've seen enough boys die with uniforms on," Corbin said. Didn't care to add a barefoot one to the count. She studied his face, taking his measure the way a horse trader took the measure of stock. "The riders who came today," she said. "They will not stop. Tomorrow they ride to the railroad camp. They ask for soldiers in blue to join them. They will gather more men, Then they will come hunting, not 8 but many. I figured as much, Corbin said. They will ask many questions. Who has seen Apache? Who has seen smoke? Who knows the paths into the high ground? Her eyes did not move from his. They will come to you again, because you stand alone between town and hills. Because you are useful. And you? He asked. What do you want from me? She paused a moment, as if considering how much truth to put into words. My father will move our camp, she said. There are old people with us. Little ones. A band who raided foolishly 2 weeks ago passed through our valley and left their stink behind. To your Captain Pike, all tracks look the same. So we must vanish. But we cannot outrun soldiers on fresh horses forever. She stepped half a pace closer. Even on the porch, looking up a little, Corbin had the sense of her standing over him rather than before him. When the riders come, Nioni said, you may lead them quickly onto our trail. You may point to the places where the land narrows and sound carries and blood will run easiest. Or you may send them elsewhere, toward dry canyons and empty stone. You may give them time to cool, to listen, to see they chase ghosts, not justice. Either way, men will die because of the path you choose. I'm no scout, Corbin said, though they both knew he'd ridden these ridges enough to know every draw and cut. No, she said. You are something more dangerous. A man who thinks before he moves. The words landed harder than any praise would have. Thinking men had started as many wars as hot-headed ones, in Corbin's experience. The difference lay in who they meant to save. What does your father say about all this? He asked quietly. She half turned, so the lamplight caught another shape behind her, seated on a dark horse. The man was older, his hair threaded with gray, his posture easy and straight. He might have been another shadow, if not for the way the space around him seemed to acknowledge his presence. He says you are standing with one foot on each side of a crack, Nioni said. Soon the earth will move. You cannot stay that way. You must choose. Choose who I betray, Corbin said. Choose whose dead you wish to carry, she answered. They left him with that. When they rode off into the dark, the night closed around the house again, but it did not feel like solitude anymore. It felt like waiting. At first light, Corbin saddled his bay, stuffed a little food and more water into his saddlebags, and rode out before the sun cleared the eastern ridge. He left Tomas in the shed with a blanket, a dipper, and a promise he was not sure how to keep. The air was cold enough still that his breath showed in front of him. He took a narrow trail that cut behind the first line of low hills, keeping his ranch out of sight, and topped a rise where he could see 3 directions at once. To the south, a smear of smoke marked the line where the railroad crews camped. Somewhere between there and town, Pike and his men would be telling their story, stoking fear and anger. To the north, higher ground rolled away in folds and ridges, good country for hiding a camp, better country for an ambush. Somewhere there, Nigani's people were already breaking down their wickiups, packing what they could carry, leaving what they could not. He turned the bay east and followed a faint game trail along the spine of a low mesa. 2 hours later, he saw what he was looking for, a narrow cut where 2 stony slopes pinched in close, then fell away again to lower ground. It was the sort of place a man furious for revenge would ride through too fast, and the sort of place a man with a rifle poked into cracks could make a dozen attackers pay dearly. He marked it in his mind like a brand. By midday he was back at the ranch. Heat had climbed. Flies buzzed lazy circles near the water trough. Tomas dozed in the shed, sweat beading on his forehead, the worst of the fever breaking. Corbin changed the bandage, gave him more water, and tried not to think about how much worse it would hurt if this all went wrong, and the boy ended up back in the kind of hands he had hidden him from? Pike came just before dusk. This time he brought more than his 8 men. Behind the militia rode 6 soldiers in blue coats dulled by trail dust, a sergeant at their head with a face like sun-dried leather. A small wagon rattled among them, an extra crate lashed at the rear. Corbin did not need to ask to know there were cartridges in that crate. Enough to keep rifles barking for a long time. "Busy day," Corbin said, stepping off the porch. Pike swung down, boots hitting dirt with a thud. "You lied to me," he said without preamble. Corbin kept his face still. "About what? About seeing nothing," Pike snapped. "We picked up sign less than half a mile from here. Fresh pony tracks. Bare feet. Somebody's been moving past you. You mean to tell me you never noticed?" "I mean to tell you I have cattle to mind," Corbin said. "I don't spend all day studying every rabbit trail out there." "The hell you don't," Cole said from his saddle. His eyes glittered with a kind of satisfaction, as if the world had finally lined up with his expectations. "You're out here alone on purpose. A man like that watches everything." "Captain, he's covering for them." The sergeant cleared his throat. "We haven't ridden all this way to argue on a man's doorstep," he said. "Point us to where you last saw their sign, Mr. Thorne. The sooner we catch up, the sooner this business is finished. Business. As if the lives out there were casks to be counted." Corbin thought of the narrow cut between stone shoulders. He saw Pike's men funneled into it, saw muzzle flashes blooming from shadowed cracks and ledges, saw horses screaming as they went down. He saw Thomas among the bodies, because war never stopped neatly at its edges. "I know a way into the North Country," he said slowly. "Old Herder's Path. Brings you up on high ground where you can see 3 valleys at once. If they're moving camps, they'll have to cross in one of them." Pike watched him with flat eyes. "And you'd show us this out of the goodness of your heart." Corbin looked past him at Cole, at the soldiers, at the crate of cartridges lashed to the wagon. "I'd show you because if you ride blind into those hills with that many guns, and that much anger, you're liable to kill the wrong people and get yourselves killed besides. You want revenge, Captain? I'm offering you a chance at something closer to truth." "Truth?" Cole scoffed. The sergeant said, "I'll take any ground that gives my men a better look at what we're getting into." Pike's jaw worked. He spat into the dust, considered the horizon, then looked back at Corbin. "All right. You ride with us. If I smell so much as a hint you're leading us in circles, I'll put you on foot and burn your place behind us." "That your idea of a fair bargain?" Corbin asked. "It's the only one on offer," Pike said. Corbin thought of the house, the barn, the shed. Of the boy's thin face, the way his hands had trembled around the canteen. Of Neone on his porch, saying, "Whose dead do you wish to carry?" "All right," he said. "I'll ride." He saddled the bay under their watchful eyes and swung up. Thomas' dark gaze watched through a hairline crack in the shed wall as the riders turned north with Corbin at their head. The land changed as they went, growing rougher under the horses' hooves. Zaga gave way to rock and scrub pine. The sun slid down, spreading a long red line along the western sky. Corbin led them along the flank of a ridge, down into a dry arroyo, up again. The path he chose was real enough, worn by deer and the odd stray steer. It simply did not go where Pike thought it would. He brought them not to the narrow killing place he had marked, but to a broad shelf of ground above it, where low junipers crouched, and a man could see a long way. From there, the tight throat of the canyon lay plain below, a dark slot in the hills. Pike rode up beside him. "Why stop?" he demanded. "Because if they're watching, that's where they'll put their rifles," Corbin said, nodding toward the pinch. You ride through there with your men strung out in a line. You won't make it 50 yards before horses start dropping. From up here, you can see if anyone's waiting for you. As if on cue, a shout echoed faint from the far side of the gorge. Figures moved on the opposite ridge, slipping out from behind rocks and scrub. A moment later, the flat, carrying bark of a rifle cracked once, the bullet whining overhead to smack uselessly into stone well behind the group. Cole jerked in his saddle. "They're here," he shouted, jerking up his rifle. "Hold your fire," the sergeant barked. Another shout rolled across the space, this time in Apache. Corbin could not make out the words, but knew the cadence. Neoni's voice. An answer came from somewhere closer, behind a jut of rock below them. "Get down," Corbin snapped, driving his own horse toward a low shelf of stone. Bullets were not yet coming in earnest, but panic traveled faster than lead. If one of Pike's boys fired wild into the rocks, every man hiding there would answer. Pike dragged his horse in tight. "You told them we were coming," he said, eyes blazing. "I told no one," Corbin said. "But this is their country. You don't move a dozen horses and a wagon full of cartridges through it without someone hearing." Another figure stepped out on the far ridge, tall braids catching the last light. She raised both hands, empty, palms spread. "She wants to talk," Corbin said. "She wants to stall," Cole hissed. "We have the high ground. We can take them right now. You shoot a woman holding up empty hands, you'll start something none of us can ever put out," Corbin said. Pike's face was gray under his beard. He looked from the canyon to the men at his back, to the figures on the rocks. "I didn't come up here to talk," he muttered. "Then you came here to bury half these boys," Corbin said, his voice low but sharp. "You lost folks at bitter draw. I know. I'm sorry for it. But you start firing into that canyon, you'll kill people who never saw those wagons, and they'll kill you back, and won't bring anybody's kin home." A shot cracked again from somewhere low. Stone chipped near Cole's boot, showering his stirrup with grit. He swore. "Somebody over there didn't get our message," he snapped. "That one was warning," Corbin said. "Next ones won't be if we don't answer right." He shoved his rifle into Pike's hand, butt first, and swung down from the saddle. "Where in hell do you think you're going?" Pike demanded. "To talk," Corbin said. "You can shoot me in the back if it makes you feel better. Won't change much down there." He walked away from the line of horses with his hands held empty, feeling every eye on his back. The ground sloped gradually toward the canyon rim. A man walking there made a clean, easy target. He felt it in his bones. The old battlefield sense came back, the prickle that said where death might come from. Halfway to the rim he stopped and lifted his voice. "Nijoni," he shouted. "It's Corbin Thorne. I'm coming to the edge. Tell your men to hold their fire unless they're set on killing a fool with nothing in his hands." For a moment, nothing moved. Then her answer came, high and sharp, cutting the hot stillness. Words rolled along the stone. Silence settled again, thick as wool. Corbin walked the rest of the way to the brink. The canyon fell away at his feet, 30 yards across at the top, narrowing below. On the far side, among the rocks, he saw faces. Older men, boys not much older than Thomas, 2 women, one holding a baby tight against her chest. Rifles bristled, angled in his direction but not yet settled. Neoni stood on a ledge opposite him, level with his own place on the rim. Her father stood just behind her, motionless. "You bring many guns," she called. "Seems to be the fashion," Corbin said. "You stand between them and us," she said. "Is that your choice?" I'm standing here, he said. I guess that's answer enough. Behind him, he heard Pike bark an order for his men to hold. The sergeant added his own authority to it. No one fired. We did not raid your wagons at Bitter Draw, Neoni said. Another band did. They passed like sickness. We chased them away from our valley. My father would not give them shelter. Now your men chase their tracks and find ours instead. Is that justice? No, Corbin said. It's habit. Her father spoke then, his Apache slow and level. Neoni listened, then translated. He says the men behind you think killing any Apache will make their hearts stop hurting. He says they are wrong. He says he will fight if he must, but he would rather not count bodies on either side of this canyon. Your cousin is at my place, Corbin said. Alive. I mean to see he stays that way. But if bullets start flying here, I can't promise anything. That's truth. I'm tired of lies. Nigoni's eyes searched his face. What do you ask? She called. Time, he said. For your camp to break and move. For these men to see that the people in their sights are families, not shadows. For the right ones to be blamed for what was done. She spoke swiftly to her father. The old man listened, his gaze never leaving Corbin. At last, he nodded once. She looked back across the space. If we move, the soldiers will say we are guilty. If we stay, they will say the same. What will you tell them, Corbin Thorne? He thought of Pike's face, of Cole's hunger for a clean story where everything evil wore the same feathers. He thought of the little bone disc at Thomas's neck, of wagon ruts marred by bare feet, of burned canvas and charred wood. I'll tell them what I see, he said. Old men, children, Torto, people who would rather live than die. I'll tell them chasing the other band south will serve their dead better than slaughtering the wrong camp in a canyon they don't understand. Whether they listen is on them. But I won't be the one pointing a rifle at you. She held his gaze another long moment, then gave the smallest of nods. Her father spoke again. This time, after she listened, she did not translate it all. Only one line. He says if you lie, to them or to us, this land will remember, and so will we. I've lied as much as I mean to already, Corbin said. They broke off then, as if some unspoken piece of business had been settled. Figures began to melt back from the rim, slipping into the rocks. Within minutes, the far side of the canyon looked empty, except for wind and scrub. Corbin turned back. Pike sat his horse where Corbin had left him, face carved from granite. The soldiers watched with the flat stare of men waiting to be told whom to shoot. Well, Pike demanded. What did they say? That this wasn't their raid, Corbin said. And they've no interest in dying here today. And you believe them. Pike made it an accusation, not a question. I believe wagon burnings and killings were done, Corbin said. I also believe the men and women you just had in your sights weren't there when it happened. I saw 2 babies, Pike. Your dead don't need those on their conscience, Cole snorted. They'll run together, he said. You heard him yourself, Captain. They drove the raiders from their valley. That makes them kin, at least. You gonna swallow his story like it's gospel, just because some tall squaw bats her eyes from a rock? Corbin stepped closer, almost close enough to touch the younger man's boot. You pull that trigger longing for glory, boy, and you'll be the first one down there on the stones, he said quietly. Not by Apache hands. By mine. I've had my fill of men who shoot before they think. Cole's face flushed. His finger twitched near the trigger. The sergeant nudged his horse between them. Easy, he said. Nobody's firing without orders. Pike looked toward the empty far rim, then down into the canyon, reading sign with the part of his mind that had kept him alive this long. He saw perhaps what Corbin saw, not an army, not a prepared killing ground, but a line someone had chosen not to cross. His shoulders sagged a fraction. "Damn you, Thorne," he said. "If I ride back and tell folks we turned away when we had the enemy in front of us, they'll call me coward. You can tell them you saved their sons from dying in a rock chute where they'd never even see who killed them," Corbin said. "Or you can ride south and hunt the band that actually hit those wagons. There's signs out there. You know it as well as I do. You just don't want to admit you lost it somewhere." Pike's mouth twisted. Pride and grief wrestled behind his eyes. At last, he jerked his chin toward the sergeant. "We follow the original trail south," he said. "If we lose it for good, we come back with more men and finish this another way." "Understood," the sergeant said. Cole spat into the dust. "We're just letting them go. We're doing my job, which is keeping you breathing," the sergeant said. "You don't like it. You can walk home." Pike turned his horse. "Thorne," he said without looking back, "you've made yourself a narrow kind of life out here. Don't look for help from town the next time you need a hand. You picked your company." "I know," Corbin said. They rode off the way they had come, the wagon rattling, the crate of cartridges still unopened. Dust swallowed them one by one. On the far ridge, for just a moment, a figure appeared against the darkening sky. Tall, still, watching. Naomi lifted one hand, not quite a wave, more a simple mark that she had seen and understood. Corbin lifted his hand in answer. Then she was gone. By the time he got back to the ranch, the stars were out. Thomas slept more easily, the fever broken. When Corbin told him, haltingly, where he had been, the boy listened in silence, then reached for the bone disc at his neck and slipped it off. He held it out, palm flat. "No," Corbin said automatically. "That's yours." Thomas shook his head. "You cross," he said, searching for the word. "Between." He touched the disc to Corbin's chest, just below the collarbone. "My uncles say, men like that need sign. So people know which way they stand." Corbin hesitated, then took it. The leather thong felt thin and strong at once. He looped it over his head. The disc rested warm against his skin, a small, solid weight. "Your uncle sounds like a hard man," he said. Thomas thought, then nodded. "Hard," he agreed. "But fair." For the first time since he had found the boy in the wash, Corbin smiled without feeling it crack his face. Days went by. Word drifted up from town through a passing freighter that Pike's trail had led south and petered out among badlands. Men grumbled. Some called him coward behind his back. None of that talk reached the ears of the people in the canyon. They had packed and moved by then, following their own paths into distances the law on paper could not touch. Pike never came to burn the ranch. He did not come to help, either. When a storm months later tore down half of Corbin's south fence, he mended it alone. When a steer bogged in the mud of a rare flood, he dragged it out with his own rope and his own aching back. Sometimes, at the far edge of his vision, he thought he saw riders on the high ridges, watching, then turning away. Once, in a dry year, he woke to find tracks by his well. Small moccasined feet, a woman's print, a man's, and one extra bucket filled and left by the door, as if someone had quietly paid for water they had taken. He kept the little bone disc under his shirt most days. When men from town came by to buy a heifer or ask after strays, they did not see it. When he rode the hills alone, he let it hang in the open. The wind flipped it sometimes, the leather cord rubbing a small, honest circle against his neck. He never did tell anyone exactly what had been said on the canyon rim. Folks built their own stories anyway. Some called him Indian lover. Some called him fool. A few older men who had seen enough killing to know its true cost nodded once when his name came up and changed the subject. On harsh evenings, when the sky bled red over the low hills and the wind smelled of dust and pine smoke, Corbin would sit on his porch with a cup of coffee and listen to the country breathe. The choice he had made sat with him like another presence. He had not bought peace. The land did not offer that at any price. But he had stepped once between two hungers and refused to feed either one with the bodies of strangers. That had to count for something. If another child ever stumbled out of the high country and fell in his path, Apache or white, or something else entirely, he knew what he would do. The decision had already been made the first time he uncapped his canteen and tilted it toward a cracked mouth. He would give water. He would take the weight. He would live with what followed. It was, in its rough way, a kind of justice he could still believe in.